We are live. Hello, everybody. If you're here already, welcome. If you're not, I can't say welcome because you're not here. We've got a little while before we get started. I'm also just going to play around a little bit to see. I had a notification from StreamYard, the platform I do this on, regards to this, and it says it's not connected. So I'm just going to check on mine to see if it's something which is going to come up and if it's working or not. So let's have a look. But as I kind of feel this time, obviously I'm happy and glad to have Rob Stephenson on again to share all of his amazing insights around this. We are live, Rob. Good. I don't need to see myself. Happy and glad to have Rob Stephenson on again, sharing all his insights into this space. We did this last year and with such good information and a really enjoyable session. So I'm glad Rob said yes. Thank you for joining me again.
Pleasure.
But it's going to be a really great session. If you have any questions for Rob, if you're in organizations or outside organization, please feel free to ask because Rob will probably most likely have the answer or have insights into that. But please interact as much as possible. We've got a lot of people coming today, and the more we can help and share insights, the better. I should probably clear the elephant in the room. If you can see me quite close, I now have a lovely, gorgeous shiner from my basketball game yesterday. I got a nice finger in the eye, and it opened up the top of my eyelid. So yeah, all surviving. I'm not sure Ryan could see my. Can you see Ryan's chat, by the way, Rob?
I can see the chat. Yes. Hey, Ryan. Good to see you. Happy New Year.
I feel like Ryan put that in before he could see the eye. We'll see what he says next. But mate, look, let's get started. Thank you for joining me. Before I kind of throw this over to you, I'm just going to do a really quick introduction to the guys maybe who don't know who I am or people who see me but don't know what I do. My name's Rich. I am a high-performance executive coach helping managers and leaders and organizations create high-performing people and leaders through coaching and training. I am also the founder of Employees Health, which is a workplace wellbeing solution or education company, helping educate employees how to live healthier and happier. And obviously the host of this, the Wellbeing Chat. Cheers, Ryan. Rob always looks good. Rob, I feel like the top knot's gone all the way into a top knot now, like a proper
It's proper tied back right now. So I've grown it out. So at the age of 52, soon to be 53, I've still got hair that I can do this with. My wife doesn't particularly enjoy the long hair, but it's fun.
Yeah, I love it. It's good. As you can see, I'm trying to get mine out, but it just takes forever. Anyway, side talk. That's my introduction. Rob, rather than me butchering yours, please share who you are, what you do for me.
Thanks, Rich. So I would describe myself as a kind of wellbeing keynote speaker, a mental health campaigner. For the last 8 years, I've been working on my mission of inspiring the creation of mentally healthy workplaces where people in those workplaces feel equipped, empowered, have permission to prioritize wellbeing. And they also feel safe in seeking help when they've got a mental health challenge and need support. And this mission has sort of taken me in a whole bunch of weird and wonderful directions. So I run the Inside Out Awards with Chris Cummings. I have a tech platform called FormScore. I've got the not-for-profit of the Inside Out leaderboard that showcases senior leader stories. But at the core of what I do, it's public speaking. It's going into organizations to inspire people to think differently about well-being. It's working with leadership groups to understand how they can build well-being into their agenda and their teams, even from a strategy point of view. And then I've got a fun music and mental health performance called Harmonizing the Mind, which is getting a lot of interest at the moment. So a whole bunch of stuff, but really I see my mission as helping to inspire change on mental health and well-being in the workplace.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I know I've been following you. We've been friends for a while now, and you're definitely doing that. So yeah, keep going. I love it.
Thank you.
I guess, but I also know there's a story to why, and it'd be good for you just to share that why and that story so people can understand why you are, where you are.
Yeah, of course. So I experienced my own mental health challenges. I experienced bipolar. which is a mental illness characterized by extremes of mood. And, as I say, I'm 52 now. I was diagnosed with this condition when I was around 30 and learned to manage this challenge, with, the support of the medical profession and therapy and medication. But also I learned to proactively manage my well-being. So, for me, sleep, exercise when I can, connecting with people, and music have all been things that help me stay balanced with those extremes of mood with bipolar. But what I found was I'd learned to become reasonably effective at managing it, but I did so under the radar because of the fear of how I'd be perceived by colleagues, by clients, by friends, but by everyone in society. And I think it was a few catalysts happened sort of around 2017, but one of whom was Jeff McDonald, who I know you know. And I heard Jeff share his story at a small event at a friend of mine's business. And I'd got to thinking, why am I hiding this? Why am I putting physiotherapy in my diary every time I go and see my therapist over a period of years? And so I decided to share my story. And it was that kind of sharing of story that really opened my eyes to how many people, even in my immediate network, have got a mental health challenge but don't talk about it, which really inspired me to start this mission. So I think initially a lot of my work was around trying to smash the stigma of mental ill health. As the time has evolved in that 8-year period, it's a lot about trying to help people think about well-being differently, because it's not just about the people who are struggling, it's about everybody else. But my motivation came from actually deciding to be more open about my own challenges.
Yeah, and I think you said like that sharing, is that how the inside out leadership kind of started? Because I think that's where it all kind of started, wasn't it?
Yeah, because I looked for a way to contribute at that time, and I remember attending, which I ultimately spoke at for a few years as well. Legal and General did this amazing conference, the Not a Red Card event, that was kind of using sport as a medium to talk about mental health and mental ill health. And I remember the first one, it was at Twickenham, and there was a whole day of activities and speakers, but there was a lot of sort of workshop type activities. And the then CEO of Legal and General summed it up with his top point of saying, we need more senior leaders who could be open about their challenges of mental health to act as role models. And I thought that's probably where I could contribute. I'm from a recruitment executive search background. I've got a decent network and good networking skills. I also used to work with a guy called Suki Sandhu, who runs similar sorts of initiatives for other aspects of diversity, the outstanding lists and the heroes lists, etc. And so thought, could we apply that sort of concept of a published list to mental ill health, which at the time I think was kind of a real effective means of saying, look, our leaders are talking about mental illness. It's okay for employees to seek help. I think the agenda's probably moved on a little bit. I think we need leaders engaging with well-being in its broadest sense now. But at the time, smashing the stigma and making people feel a bit safer to speak out and seek help when they're struggling was really important. I think it's still an important part of the mission, by the way. I just feel that the mission's a bit broader, but that really was where I could initially make a difference and make a contribution.
Yeah, wicked. Thanks, Rob. Thanks for sharing.
Pleasure.
I guess where to start? I think let's take a quick reflection on 2024 to hear what you thought, how you think Wellbeing went, what some of the challenges were, and also what some of the wins were. So I don't mind if you want to start with challenges or if you want to start with wins, but I'm going to throw this over to you, mate.
Yeah, so I think we did this 12 months ago, didn't we? And I thought it'd be interesting to see what I spoke about. And I'm going to digress a little for a second, but I thought I'm going to go and rewatch the show from last year. And then I thought, actually, could I use technology to make that a bit more efficient? So actually what I did was I found some free transcript tool that downloaded everything we said. And then I put that very clunky transcript into ChatGPT and asked it to summarize it for me. And it was literally a 3-minute exercise. And that came up with the themes that we discussed. And I'm going to list those out for you, and we can then have a view on kind of how well last year tracked against them. I also think a lot of them are evolving and very relevant still for this year. But we spoke about kind of leadership, elevating leadership on the topic, and psychological safety. We spoke about moving from solutions to systemic change in organizations. We spoke about the idea of customization and inclusivity on the wellbeing agenda. We spoke about investing in manager and employee support. We spoke about building social connections in hybrid work models, emphasis on recovery and balance, and then the rise of human sustainability, i.e., is work in its broad sense adding to you as a human being beyond the paycheck. And those were the things that we kind of covered, and I think we've definitely saw some progress on that. I think. But I'd say, as we list out the thoughts on 2025, I think all of those in some form or shape will be key priorities. I think what I saw was organizations truly looking to see how to embed well-being in business practices. And I think that trend needs to continue. I think a lot of organizations had bought solutions through the pandemic, and questioning the utilization and the impact of certain solutions. I think there's a place for solutions, but asking the question, how can we ensure the way that we're working is conducive to health of people? And I certainly worked with a number of organizations, particularly leadership teams, to say, okay, let's start with psychological safety and see how we can embed that in our teams, because then the outcomes can flow from there. So I think that was pretty successful for the organizations that chose to do that hard work. And I think that's an important caveat, because it is hard. It's much harder than buying a solution. But actually, if you put the work in, the benefits, I think, can be greater. But you've got to choose to do that hard work. I think organizations have wrestled with hybrid ways of working. So I think we probably still saw people working in a very traditional way, just from different places. So you'd go into the office on whatever days you'd need to go into the office for knowledge workers, and potentially you could still be sitting on Teams calls, right? So I think I'm not sure how successful that was changed in terms of truly thinking of ways of working and how we can do work more efficiently. I think there's more work to do there, particularly in the organizations that are then forcing people back into the office for 5 days a week, even in some cases, which again, we can talk about that a little bit. I think human sustainability is very much in its inception. I saw a little bit of progress there, again, in more forward-thinking organizations. But I think, the purpose of corporations generally is profit and creation of shareholder value. I think there probably still is, in my opinion, too much of a tension between well-being and those outcomes. I don't think too many organizations truly understand, if you want sustainable performance and profit from people, you've got to look at well-being. It's not just something that's a nice to have, or something to even focus on where people start to struggling or get burnt out. So this idea of sustainable human performance, and then offering, a work experience that is life enhancing, I think that's very much in its inception. And last year it was the more forward-thinking organizations that do that. Again, in some of the requests for proposals for work for this year that I've been responding to, I've seen some interesting stuff around ways of working and prioritization and creating space for thinking, for looking after well-being. So there is, some green shoots, some nice things coming through there. But again, that's in a small subset of organizations.
Yeah. It's a really nice reflection, actually, looking back at what we kind of spoke about. And as you read it, feels like, actually, you can see the thing, the term embedding really kind of resonated with me. I think last year it felt like it was a bit of we kind of got through COVID. Let's really reflect on that and figure out what the next things are to do, and then slowly And I mean, really slowly start to embed that. And the fact that I know when we go into the future part, I think it's really going to be progression on that. But I think it's progression because people are reflecting and embedding some internal processes and really figuring out what their future strategies need to be.
Yeah. I think that's right. So for me, I think we've seen a shift generally in how organisations are viewing well-being. Some of it's good, some of it's not so good, but we're seeing that shift. I think organisations that get it, it is that operationalising well-being, embedding well-being, it's bringing it into business practices. It's educating different layers of leadership, and it's inspiring them to get behind it, giving them the why, but also giving them the how. So I think all of that's super important. And for me, I think this year is hopefully, and we've got to be hopeful in this industry. I think it's kind of the next layer of this, the next evolution of this. I think some of that work has started. But I expect to see more momentum this year from organisations that do understand that.
Yeah, I think the time, hopefully, for this year is implementation of what they've started to embed.
Yeah, I think so, and it's a big journey, right? It's a big mission. As I say, it's easy to purchase a solution and get budget to do that. It's a lot harder to convince layers of leadership that this is worthy of investing their time. And so I work with Tim Munden, if you know Tim, and Tim, the ex kind of chief learning officer and head of wellbeing at Unilever, a great thinker in the people space and the leadership space. But he talks a lot about systems thinking for wellbeing leaders. So Tim and I are working on this course called High Impact Wellbeing that we're going to be running for wellbeing leads in the summer. Mm-hmm. But that idea of being able to influence a kind of a network and across a whole different bunch of systems in an organization, it's a real key skill set for those responsible for wellbeing, because that's actually what we need, is to equip different parts of a system of a business to understand this is really important stuff, and it's actually in line with your objectives and your goals of growing your business, of producing a return. But we need to embed it. So that idea of the role of the wellbeing lead as an influencer, as a persuader of a diverse series of leaders in a business is really important.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? That role of a wellbeing lead. You probably go into it thinking you're going to do lots of wellbeing stuff, but actually probably the work you got to do is strategic. And I use the word sales because it's kind of influencing the board and selling what you think is the right thing to do for for that company to the board.
Yeah, I think so, but I think it's probably easier to get the board and the exco particularly on board with this stuff, aligned with this stuff. I think if you then in a large organization go down the layers of management, that's where it becomes more tricky, because any senior level, mid-manager level individual that's got a position of leadership have got so many conflicting responsibilities and so much stuff coming at them that the skill is really kind of to allow them to understand why this is so important and why they should invest their scarce resource, their time, in making it happen.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I guess when you were talking earlier on about that kind of understanding and to why people are buying into this or struggling to buy into it, and I know you work with obviously a lot of leadership people and leadership groups. Be interested. What my question is, rather than just fluffing around it, is what are you seeing why people aren't on this? Because to me, kind of human performance is embedded in wellbeing. I don't understand why it's taken so long for people to understand that or buy into that. So when you're working with so many leaders, what are they struggling to see? Why are they struggling to see that impact or the comparison between the two?
So I think there's the way well-being has evolved, and it's evolved probably out of a need to look at mental health. Mm-hmm. People think it's there's a general view that it's something to focus on when people are struggling, because we've spoken about the mental health challenge, we've spoken about stigma. So initially, what organisations started to address were, okay, we need to support people who are struggling, and we need to help them feel comfortable in doing so. And so then, and that traditionally might have been achieved by, having some form of support solution, whether that's an EAP or in-house counselling or whatever it might be. It's by awareness raising, which is great. We need to do all of that. It's really important. And talks and lived experience and employee resource groups and blog posts and videos, This Is Me campaigns, all of that. All with the view of helping people who are struggling. And then what we're saying is, actually, what about everybody else? So when we start thinking about everyone else, it is a performance issue. It's a component of sustainable performance, but it's grown out of something that has been around supporting people who are struggling. So I think if you're a leader that's not, through any fault of their own, not knowledgeable about this stuff, they're not an expert in mental health and well-being, they haven't had a family member who's struggled, they might understand the benefits of getting a good night's sleep and exercising and generally eating healthily, but that's where it goes. Then actually their view is in what they need to be doing is supporting people when they're struggling. There's a shift, there's an inspirational bit around, actually, if you think of whatever sporting hero you have, whether it's kind of a tennis great, I always use LeBron James as my example as a fellow basketball player. LeBron competing at the top of his game for now his 22nd year in the NBA. And the reason he's doing that is because he focuses on his recovery. Any athlete will focus on, you improve when you're resting. You have a training stimulus or a competition stimulus, and you adapt and grow when you're resting. In the workplace, there's a view that we can just keep pushing. And a lot of people have come up through certain careers, if you look at the legal industry or the banking industry, almost superhuman, type feats of deal flow and activity. And that's how they've got to where they are. So that's what they know. Whereas actually, to perform at your best, you can't ignore recovery. You can't ignore the need for those drivers of well-being. So for me, it's an inspiration or an education bit to get people to think in that way. And certainly the alpha types, if you kind of use the sporting analogy, the elite sporting analogy, that can be quite helpful because it makes kind of a lot more sense. I can see prevention there on the chat from Cecile. It is prevention, but it's also kind of it's also optimization. It's fueling you to be the best you can be. And so I think for me, it's about giving leaders the inspiration and the understanding that well-being isn't this soft, fluffy thing that is a nice to have, a benefits issue. It's actually helping people be at their best in a sustainable fashion.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. And I completely agree with the way you kind of went around that and the challenges. And I think, I was going to say, if we change the way that well-being become popular, people might see the impact and the importance of well-being, but we probably wouldn't have got to this space if actually we didn't start with the mental health. I think if we started at well-being and rather than mental health, I think maybe they would understand it a bit more. But as you said, I think people's view or vision of well-being is now so mental health focused rather than kind of our performance and our kind of energy and the impact we can have on the workplace and how we have on a group. That's what impacts, or potentially why you pay the money to do the work, right?
Yeah, and energy. You use the word energy. It's an interesting one, right? So, energy and well-being could be, they could be interchangeable in effect. You say to a leader, "Would you want an energized team?" The answer is 100%. So therefore, how do you get an energized team? Well, it's actually the fundamentals of well-being. It's, are they psychologically safe? Are they able to take a break? Are they sleeping well enough? Do they have sense of purpose in what they do? Do they feel supported in what they do? Are they adequately trained? Do they have a balanced life? Are they managing stress with moments of recovery? all of these things build your energy, your resilience, your well-being, whatever you want to be. So I think it's trying to find a way of igniting the imagination in leaders, that they get this and see the importance of it, where they've got a whole bunch of things that are important, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I'm looking at my little notes from what kind of your reflection, and one of the things I've written down here is tech and the potential. I know, and I do know a lot of these big companies who have spent a lot of money on apps and to get poor engagement, or engagement which isn't up to scratch, I guess. What's your thoughts? What's your views on that as a kind of reflection on the kind of past 2024, and where do you see that going now, and what is the important part to reflect on?
Yeah, so I think tech solutions in well-being, they're often judged by engagement, and I don't think that's the most effective measure, for one. And because that's the way you often will judge a tech solution. Are people using it? For the people that use a tech solution, it could be life-changing, it could be life-saving, it will certainly be performance-enhancing. You often hear people in our industry berating things like yoga. I don't know why we're berating yoga. It's worked for human beings for thousands of years, and it's a wonderful thing for the people that do it. I think what people are berating is that just offering a bunch of yoga classes is not enough to solve the challenges of a toxic workplace or unrealistic work demands. So I think engagement in itself is probably not the right metric. But I think what we have to realize, and I think one term we'll hear more of in 2025, is hyper-personalization. So we need to offer solutions across a whole diverse workforce. And so using a single tech product or yoga as an example, that's not going to be enough for everybody. So we've got to offer a solution that can be appreciated and utilized by a diverse section of the workforce. So I think engagement is a challenge that we've got to try and address. But I think we need a suite of products, or a product that is a kind of marketplace of solutions that allows that, or a solution that truly is very, very diverse. We've got Ryan on financial well-being is really important. You've got specifics around kind of stage of life, menopause, around new parents. You've got people that need to be inspired to move more. You've got the whole social connection bit going on. All again, really, really important. So for me, I think we need solutions need to evolve where they are catering to put the diverse nature of an employee base. Potentially that's where AI can help, but I don't immediately see that as the kind of panacea. So I think having the right solution is important, but making sure that it's relevant for a broad cross section of a workplace is a challenge that tech platforms got to overcome.
Yeah, and I think when I think about it, from what you said, like we can engagement, getting people to engage, I think some of these companies might do better within these organizations if they're not charging whole company, but per user, per engage, like that consistent engagement, rather, because I think that's where people are getting frustrated, is they're getting charged for 1,000 people, but only 0.5% of people are using it. They're being charged for 1,000. Where if you actually go, okay, 0.5% using it, that's how much you're going to get charged. Well, actually, then you're making an impact. There's going to be there's probably, you do that to, I don't know, the issue is for them is they've got to get hit more companies, which like every business, me and you included, have to do the sales work to go and get it, right?
yeah, for sure. But I think, you're right. If you are charging a per user fee on all users of a business, then clearly you're going to be measured against how many of those people are using it. I think if you charge a higher fee based on utilization, that could be quite interesting. But I think the challenge really is to create a suite of solutions that can be adopted by the workforce, which I think it's a bit too early in the game, but kind of marketplaces where the tech platform is the conduit to a whole range of solutions, and a few exist out there, where the individual is given a personalized well-being budget, and that person might be, benefiting from a massage a month. Another person might be doing a high-intensity exercise class. Somebody else might be, getting a weighted sleeping blanket or a solution that helps them sleep. I think that's really interesting, but it's not been widely adopted, and it's more expensive, right?
Yeah.
It's more expensive than a one-stop solution. So I think we more personalization in the solutions that we've got is important. But again, when you look at this, I think the bigger opportunity still is to embed well-being in the way that we're working. Because one argument will be, we've got great solutions, but we don't have time to use them. We've got great solutions, but my boss would frown upon it if I was going to those classes or taking them up. So that psychological safety and embedding is, I think, the bigger opportunity than the pure investment in solution.
Yeah. Actually, looking at the work and the way we work compared to what we're offering.
100%. So I got this one proposal that I've been working on for a client. It's an education kind of training proposal or inspiration proposal. But one of their ideas was, look, when a new piece of work comes into the team, what piece of work is not going to get done? How are we kicking something out the bottom that's a lower priority? Because that's typically not what happens. If something else important comes into most businesses, everything else stays, and then we've got to deal with this real high priority thing. But then that's where we're losing capacity. People then compromise things like their social connections, their relationships, their sleep, their holidays, their evenings. So how are we empowering people to say, no, I'm not going to do that because this new thing has come in as important? And is that acceptable? That's the sort of thing we need to get into as one example that's quite exciting, but difficult to do.
And as you said back earlier on, it's that hyper personalization, because some people will struggle with that. Some people will struggle with something else, and actually everybody in the team is going to have different challenges to the way that they do the work. Right. And so actually hyper personalized, and this is where I think the group coaching and the training that you and I both offer, but also the one-to-one stuff, I think is also really valuable. But anyway, look, I think we're half 30 minutes through. It'd be really interesting to kind of go forward a little bit to look into the future of what 2025 could bring. I know you got a few different insights and kind of seeing how this kind of progresses. Kind of question to you is like, what's going to be the kind of key focuses for organizations, and maybe the theme for 2025?
So I think you can have an overarching idea that of change. Organizations are all facing a period of constant and in certain cases quite dramatic change. AI is an obvious one, and when I'm talking about AI here, I'm not talking about how we build AI into a tech platform that looks after well-being, or even how that can help with the personalization we've been talking about. But AI is going to fundamentally change how a lot of organizations are working. Now, to use my example of reviewing the trends that we spoke about last year, what would have taken me probably an hour in terms of watching or scanning through the video took me 5 minutes. Now, what do I do with that other 55 minutes, right? Do I fill that with other busyness and work, or do I use that for some reflective thinking about something else going on, or go for a walk outside to ponder a work problem? This is the opportunity for me with AI and change. I think you're seeing a lot of pressure, as I've mentioned, of people returning to the office. Certain organizations, particularly in banking and tech, saying we want 4 or 5 days a week. That will be creating friction with people who want that flexibility and want to retain that flexibility. Again, I've seen other headlines yesterday around certain firms and companies are looking to invest in AI over headcount because the cost of headcount with national insurance rises in the UK is now much more expensive. So that again is changed, but also that a lot of employees will be feeling threat over their jobs and what they actually do. So I think, if you're a wellbeing leader, there's going to be this whole bunch of change. Your budget may or may not be under pressure because costs are under pressure in organizations. We've also got this idea of certain organizations turning away from some of the diversity initiatives they've had. We've seen Meta talk about this. We've seen others talk about this in the US. Now, the need for diversity and belonging in a workplace isn't going to go away because businesses are pulling their budgets from it or switching their focus. Where will that land? That will land on the wellbeing leader because belonging is a core part of wellbeing. So my worrying prediction for this year is that I think we're going to see much more pressure on those responsible for wellbeing in an environment where we're going to experience a lot of change in an organization. Mm-hmm. So that would be a concern. But I think there's also then opportunity. So again, if we use the AI example, looking at how AI can increase efficiency, can increase an understanding of how engaged people are, can perhaps provide indicators for those that might be more susceptible for burnout, because there's a whole bunch of data analytics that could be streamlined in real time. Can we use AI to create space? Can we use technology to create space? And then can we use that space, not necessarily to go for an hour's run or kind of sit around in a park for an hour, which is nice, but actually alleviating some of the stress to provide people with the ability to just, again, have some constructive thinking time, to have some time connecting with colleagues from a different part of the business, which will improve people's sense of belonging at work and ability to think more laterally in their jobs. It would be very easy to fill up space that can be created with more busyness. Can we fill up that space with things that are life enhancing for the humans that work in the organization? So I think there's some real challenges around what's happening in the world, what's happening in the workplace, what's happening to things like diversity initiatives, DE&I initiatives in certain organizations. I think there's this pressure of people coming back to the workplace, but we have an opportunity to think about how are we working and make that more conducive to operationalizing and embedding the well-being, as we were talking about in the first half. So I think it's going to be an interesting year where there's some friction there, but an opportunity to make a positive difference where we can. And it probably still links to that idea of helping the leader at different levels of leadership understand the importance of making sure that there is this space for employees to recover from stress, to think about connecting with colleagues, particularly if people are going to be forced to be in the office more than they have been.
Yeah. And I think I want to add part there is to help leaders help their people perform optimally. And the reason why I say optimally is I think when I think about AI and the time saver it is, because for a lot, especially with words, for me, it's a time saver and huge support. But actually understanding what AI can do, and if it gives you time, sometimes the biggest stress is the fact that your to-do list is never ending. And so actually that time saver might just be to get through my to-do list, and that relieves that stress. You don't need to go for the run because you've got the opportunity, the opportunity to sift through your emails, to get rid of some of the big to-do lists and tasks which are causing you the stress. And I always remember speaking to some of my high performers, and the biggest stress is the fact that they've always got work on. And the only way they relieve that stress is when they get to a point where, for example, they have 0 emails to look at, or they've ticked off their task list for the week, and they've got then the hour or the 2 hours in that day to go and do what they need to.
Yeah. And do people truly ever get through their to-do lists? In a world where so much stuff is coming at them. I mean, emails are impossible. I mean, you can get rid of your emails quite easy, but just by deleting the lot of them. But
delete all.
but I think emails are a pretty evil tool for employee well-being. They're not the best way of communicating, but I think it's this ways of working with emails is, do you truly need to copy everybody that you're copying in on an email, or are you doing it for other reasons than efficiency? Again, it's ways of working, because then are people expected to respond to every email in a large organization? I prefer the sort of Slack type collaboration on channels that are relevant ways of communicating, but even that can be overwhelming. Meetings, that's another one. I think we've seen some trends last year of organizations trying to be more efficient with meetings, particularly regular recurring meetings that don't have agendas, etc. So again, they're looking at these ways of working with the view of the objective of creating space to do whatever. As I say, it could be getting through some of those to-do list items, or it could be creative thinking over certain problems. But I think what we're doing is we're just loading. And economic conditions are not the best out there right now. So the tendency then is to load even more.
Yeah, and I guess, and what's interesting, which I'm really kind of hearing, is we're moving a little bit more away from the foundation of what well-being is, and the education around, or the need for education around well-being. Because I think potentially we've shared that quite a lot. I presume a lot of people will understand that maybe a bit more. I think there's still space there.
I think at the individual level, yes. I think I think people have a much better idea on what's required to manage their well-being. Won't necessarily do it all of the time, but the fundamentals of sleep, exercise, nutrition, impact of alcohol, need for nutrients, social connection, recovery. I think people do have a much better awareness generally on this. I still think there's a need for inspiration, education of those that are responsible for others to allow people the space and the time and to be able to do them, for sure.
And I guess the follow-up was going to be the ways that we work to allow that to happen. So I feel like now well-being is the way we work. I feel like that's potentially the next step, is creating a better way we work, which allows for us to look after our well-being.
Yeah, I think so. It's just building it in, right? It's building it in. But I think when you look at values of an organization, the prioritizing of tasks is an interesting one. Do people have permission to say no to things because they're at capacity? And then you link back into psychological safety. Do people feel safe in saying to their line manager or whoever's giving them some work, I am at capacity, and if I take this on, that will cause a lot of undue stress that might be negative in my life. Now, there's times you've got to do it, and it depends on the industry, whatever. But do people feel safe in having that discussion about a deadline that's too restrictive, or that a work portfolio is too onerous?
Yeah, and I also think that falls also not only to the individual being able to say no, but also the manager. And this is where the training for managers is also really important. Actually, knowing what work your people are taking on. Actually, how are your people at capacity? What is their priorities? And that's where these kind of weekly meetings and catch-ups really take effect. But also, something which I'm moving into this space as well, is a little bit more, is like understanding individual strengths and what they enjoy at work. Like, if you know somebody is a social butterfly and actually works really well with people, giving them a bunch of admin tasks to deliver, it's going to take a lot of his energy. He's probably not going to enjoy it. And so that task, or those tasks that sometimes you have to do, I'm not saying you don't, but if your whole time at work is filled up with tasks that you don't enjoy and not very good at, you're going to be unhappy. You're not going to enjoy work. You're probably not going to perform that well.
Yeah, and I think you then get into kind of basics of people management, and our managers equipped to do that. Some are naturally better at that than others. People get promoted into a job generally because of success in previous jobs, and are they being then equipped enough to have that skill set? You would hope in decent organisations that people are trained up to do that, but I appreciate that's not always going to be the case.
Yeah. Okay, I guess we've got a lot of things that 2022-25, sorry, can bring and we could be focusing on? What do you think the biggest challenges are going to be coming when we look at those things?
For me, I still think the biggest challenge is winning over at an organizational level the importance of well-being, and where that should sit in the priority list. I still think that requires much more work on behalf of those who are advocating for well-being in an organization. I think that we've seen a lot of progress, but we are also now seeing a worrying trend of what I would call more authoritarian, masculine, historical ways of leading an organization come to the fore. I mean, I think Zuckerberg has even talked about more masculine leadership traits. And for me, that speaks to kind of toughness. It speaks to being led from a position of fear rather than a position of wanting to follow the leader. So I think all of that in those sort of organizations is going to be worrying for the potential for an individual to look after well-being, or going to be worrying from the propensity to increase a level of burnout. So I think there's great opportunity, there's significant challenge. I still feel that the big thing we've got to overcome is inspiring those that are managing others the importance of well-being. Forward-thinking organizations invest time and resource in doing that. Less forward-thinking organizations don't, and it's there where I think we need more focus.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I actually hadn't seen that from Mark Zuckerberg, but it's crazy, isn't it? How even in today's world, people like that and organizations like that aren't seeing what good leadership and good organizational kind of leadership or the way to run a business is. It's nuts, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, okay. Who am I to comment on telling Zuckerberg how to run a business? But I follow John Amici. John Amici, as a fellow basketball player. John played in the NBA. A British guy. I used to play against him when I was a junior. But he played for Orlando and had a career in the NBA. But he's a psychologist and a thought leader. Organizational stuff, but he's a good guy to follow on all of this stuff, because he will talk and he will be pretty brutal in how he responds to stuff like that. So he would talk about this idea of mandating 5 days in the office. Are you giving people a good enough reason to be in the office? And do they need to be in the office 5 days to do their jobs effectively? If you can't articulate that reason, why are you asking them to do it? And so I enjoy seeing his comments on this sort of stuff. But yeah, it's I do get a sense that we're moving back to a less inclusive, more authoritative, leading with fear type culture, which is never going to be conducive to well-being. And I'm fortunate enough to get to know John Flint a little bit, the previous CEO of HSBC, and he talks about the fact that his style of leadership would be to inspire people to follow him because they want to. Not leading from this position of fear, and it's a very outdated way of thinking, in my opinion. But we seem to be seeing a return to it.
Yeah, be interesting to see why that brings in this year.
Yeah. As I say, what I predict is it'll put more pressure on those who are responsible for well-being, because you'll have less resource in terms of looking at things like DE&I. And so, when you then work through to, do people have a sense of belonging, which well-being is a direct measure of, and belonging is a key driver of well-being. The Oxford University stuff will tell you that You've then got a wellbeing lead who not only looking at core wellbeing will need to be thinking about how do we counter the loss of what we've had in terms of those efforts.
Yeah.
Hopefully not in too many organizations, but there's a worrying trend there.
Yeah. I'm going to keep my eye out on that one a bit more. Rob, thank you. Time flies when you're having fun. I can't believe we've gone through 15 minutes already. I feel like I could ask more and more questions, especially kind of stuff coming up. I guess to round this out, it'd be interesting to get your top tips now for the wellbeing of 2025. So just give me three. That's right. Sorry.
Yeah. So I'll try and think of three. So I think for the wellbeing leader and for leadership generally, expect to see a lot of change in the organization, and it's really important within the context of that to think about how can we embed the well-being or continue to embed the well-being of employees in the operations of the business. I think that will become kind of crucial. I think we're going to see technology and AI particularly have an impact on how businesses work, particularly for knowledge workers. Let's use that as an opportunity to make them a place that is conducive to the health and well-being of people, not just creating space for more busyness. Mm-hmm. And then I think when we're looking at ways of working in relation to time in the office versus time working remotely, let's really then think about why are we getting people in the office and how can we facilitate collaboration, learning, and connection, as opposed to just wanting to see people and headcount in our buildings. I think, again, let's use that more effectively to look at how can we get people working more effectively.
Yeah. Great tips. Great insights, Rob. Thank you. I appreciate your time. This will get recorded, as you know, get jumped onto YouTube and to Spotify. And I plan to do a couple of clips. It's one of my goals for this year is to maybe clip up my podcast a bit more. Cool. And hopefully you'll see some more stuff there, but you'll get that. Ryan and Cecile, thank you for joining. If you are there, haven't said anything, thank you for joining. Hope you found that really useful. A couple more podcasts coming up throughout the year, so keep your eyes out over the next couple of weeks. One about social connection actually next week. And so, yeah, thank you again, Rob. Really appreciate it. Don't go anywhere. Everybody else, see you soon. Have a great 2025.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Rich.
Cheers, mate.